Right, welcome, Keith. Thank you so much for your time today and agreeing to join us on this speaker series of Talk to the Hiring Manager. Really looking forward to your insights and a warm welcome. Thank you. I know you've just coming out of a cold, so really appreciate your time, and hopefully, guys, we can have lots of questions, which then means that we don't make Keith lose his voice as part of this process as well. But lovely to have you part of the community. Really excited about what we can do next, and yeah, looking forward to your talk. So thank you.
Excellent, thanks very much, and hello to everybody. My voice is okay at the moment. If it starts to deteriorate, I have plenty of hot tea. I'm just coming off the back of a chest infection, but we should be good to go. So the whole purpose of today is really just talk about what it's like to interview at Amazon. There's a lot of stigma and misunderstanding and things about how you get through the process. I don't work at Amazon anymore. I left 6 months ago to do something else. I'm still a big advocate of Amazon. I didn't leave because I didn't like it. I left to pursue something else. And while I was at Amazon, I was doing hundreds of interviews. So I'll talk everybody through. Hopefully what you want to do is, if you are interested in Amazon, you'll know the process, you'll know how it works, you know the sorts of things you need to prep for, and generally just kind of it'll remove the kind of the unbeknown stress and just let you focus on the content of the interview. So a little bit about myself. I've been doing IT for about 30 years now. I used to run my own consultancy, an agile consultancy, for many years, and used to spend a lot of time fixing broken agile projects and doing that sort of thing, both up here in Scotland at Sky and IF and HBOS and a few other ones. But then I went to work at First Utility, which has subsequently become Shell Energy, one of the biggest disruptor energy companies. I was head of software engineering there for 5 years. I then moved back to Scotland and became VP of engineering at Fanduel, based in the Quarter Mile. I was there for a number of years. And then I joined Amazon as a senior software engineering manager, working on the advertising department. Best way to describe what I and my team did: if anywhere on the internet you get chased by an advert which takes you back to Amazon, generally a bed or a mattress or a duvet, that was us chasing you around the internet. And hopefully we got better and better over time with our machine learning models. But that was pretty much it. We presented adverts everywhere, anywhere there was an internet page or a mobile app. And just to give you an idea of scale, when I started, we were running about 500 to 750,000 transactions per second. That went up to about 1 million TPS, and I left having helped re-engineer the platform to support 10 million transactions a second, and that's predominantly because of what Google and Apple were doing with all the cookies. So big scale systems. I'm doing something on my own, which is a private piece of work, but at the same time, I'm helping out with Travis Perkins as an interim head of engineering. And over those, probably the last 20 years, I've interviewed hundreds of people. And I think while I was at Amazon, I counted, I probably interviewed about 100 individuals over the 3 years. And that's quite a lot of time. It's not just a quick one-to-one face-to-face interview. There's about 300 hours of work that goes into those things. So hopefully I can be able to explain a little bit about what the whole Amazon process is. Just a disclaimer, I don't work there anymore. And what I'll say during this presentation and my own views, it's not Amazon policy, but there's nothing proprietary or confidential in this presentation. You can Google all of this. You can go and read whole blogs and watch YouTube videos about this process, which last, can run into hours. The whole point of this is just, if you are interested in applying to Amazon for a role, regardless of whether it's from an apprenticeship intern all the way through to a senior and principal engineer, the process is pretty much the same. So just try and take out the scariness that some people feel about it, because it's a great place to work. And if anyone's interested, I can help kind of just push you in the right direction, especially if you're new to this. So just a quick background on Amazon itself. It's called the Amazon Software Development Center, and that is a specialist name. There's only a few of them. There's one in Cambridge, there's kind of others in Dublin, and they are small numbers of specialist software engineering functions. There's multiple teams there, and they focus on creating high-performing technical teams. This is at the Waverley station, or the old post office above the station. There's no sales, there's no marketing, there's no admin, apart from kind of hiring and a few things. It's, you know, in there on over 3 floors, there's 300 or 400 software engineers and probably, you know, 10 or 12 admin people. So there's a real culture of technical excellence and software engineering. Everybody there is focused on software development. They do advertising, a lot of the HR tooling, and there's also AWS who is spinning up a piece there. About over 2 floors is all of the advertising piece, both in display advertising, which I was involved in, actually getting a square on a web page or a mobile app. And then there's all of the supporting services, so it's trust, customer trust, advert trust, all that side of things, and also video. So all the video advertising as well is built out of that. It then interfaces back into New York, Canada, and Seattle for the teams. So there's quite a lot of cross-Atlantic traveling if you do get involved there from everybody of the team. But it's a really interesting place, and there's plenty of pictures on the internet that you go and see and see the officers. They spent a lot of time going through that. So just to talk, the interview process is fairly streamlined. Amazon have spent a huge amount of money making sure it's efficient both for candidates and for the company themselves, because of the amount of effort goes in for people involved. So you submit your CV. You can submit to a specific job that you see on the Amazon website, or you can submit your CV just saying, I'd like to work there. And they will then match you to various roles. So you don't have to go looking for an Amazon job. Their recruitment process is constantly looking for people at every level. So if you don't see anything that's of interest, the role might not have been advertised, or it's you know, they have vacancies, but they're not actively advertising. But if you appear, they'll pull you in. So there's lots of things. So what will happen is your CV will be screened, and if it matches what they're looking for, you'll get a telephone call, walk you through your CV, ask you a few questions, a bit of deep dive into your experience, nothing too pressure. And at the end of that, you'll get an offer of being able to go in for both a technical interview and what's called the loop that people talk about. The technical interview is typically you'll be sent a bunch of programming questions using one of the online systems. You go through some of the programming questions, and then they're rated after you. So you get timed to submit them, and you can then they'll get reviewed. And again, next stage, if you pass that, you then will get invited to the loop, and it's the loop we'll really kind of talk about today. It's really not as bad as you think. It's probably 4 to 6 hours of interviews, 1 hour at a time, in the space of a single day. They can be spread over a couple of days, but quite often it's over 1 day. And you're told in advance which ones. You're told in advance which are the leadership principles you're going to get asked on. And it's a really interesting position, because it's about not trying to trick you, not trying to catch you out, not trying to ask you the Google, how many golf balls can you fit in a mini type of questions. Really what they want to do, and I'll talk about it later as we get into this, is get evidence-based interviewing or against the leadership principles. So as we start to go through them, they'll get a feel for what they're going to do. And the HR team will tell you which leadership principles will be included in the interview. So you can bone up on them, you can go off and make sure that you've got relevant experience, because not everybody captures the right information on the CV, although the guys who review the CVs are quite good at pulling that out. They will want to know specifically the actual things that you've done when they're interviewing. All the questions are kind of competency based, and we'll get into the examples of that. So it's already you're being guided through to success with the whole interview process. They want you to be successful. They want to base it on fact, on data. They don't want to base it on, do you know Java? Yes, okay, tick that box. You know, you'll get questions of, tell me about a time when you built something with Java. Do you know design patterns? Tell me about a time when you had to trade off two different types of design patterns. And what they're looking for you to do is to respond back. Well, when I was working at this company, I was on that project and I was given responsibility for doing X, and then they'll talk you through it. And that's all the principles of what are called competency-based interviewing. So we'll deep dive into the leadership principles and just give you a flavour for what they are, and then we'll kind of go into how that then transpires into kind of the types of questions that you get. get these from the internet. They're all on the Amazon website. There's now 16 of them, although the last two are more about trying to make the warehouses a safer place, because the IT section. At the top is always at Amazon, it's customer obsession. It's the primary leadership principle that is pervasive throughout everything we do. And the Amazon leadership principles are not just used for interviewing. They're plastered all over the walls when you go through the Amazon offices, and they are called out repeatedly. You know, someone will say, that's not a customer obsession fact, or that's not really a simplified design. You know, everybody tries to call back, you know, I need you to think big on that and understand what it's going to be in 3 to 5 years. So they're kind of used constantly in everything we do. The leadership principles are really kind of part of that process. So customer obsession, they'll want to know about decisions that you've made which have had a direct impact on customers, hopefully for the benefit, where you've had to trade off possibly a time scale or a milestone or an implementation, which would have ensured that you'd actually got the customer in mind and you're giving them the best customer experience possible. Ownership, they're really looking, what did you own? What did you do? What did you deliver? And not looking for people who've been at the periphery of projects, but what have you kind of done on that project? What have you owned personally, and what have you done? Invent and simplify is a huge one. Because of the systems, because of the number of kind of software engineers, what you can end up just building really complex systems, which take a long time. That's not good customer obsession. You can see that the leadership principles are now starting to compete with each other, and quite a lot of them they do, and they're designed that way because you've got to try and trade off yourself with the Amazon principles. So the event and simplify is, you know, are you building the simplest thing and therefore getting it in front of the customer in the quickest amount of time? You know, are right a lot. We want people to have strong opinions, but also to make good judgment calls. And as you go further and further up the hierarchy within Amazon, that becomes quite a big one for your management style. You know, you've got to be making calls and not seeking further and further information or asking someone permission to do stuff. Amazon wants you to take ownership and drive that forward. Learn and be curious is a real key one for junior software engineers joining Amazon. What have you done to improve yourself? What are you learning? What are you doing outside of your normal day job to keep up to date with fund standards? But also, it's internally, you know, if you see something that you don't understand, or that there's a piece that you need to have a deeper knowledge of, have you gone off and done it yourself? Have you took that initiative and gone off? So they're looking for examples of that. The hire and develop the best is more for managers, but you know, they may ask a question when you're kind of in the lead and principal side. What are you doing about coaching and training your peers and some of the people on your team? Well, the next ones, insist on the highest standards, speaks for itself. They're looking for people who, you know, are relentless on making sure that they're building the top quality. But you've got to trade that off with customer obsession. You've got to trade that off with invent and simplify. It's not about over engineering things. It's about, you know, can you build good quality in an iterative and incremental manner, which is simple and easy to use. Because there's so much code, the systems grow at a phenomenal rate, and they've got to be easy to understand. This is think big's another one where it sort of conflicts with kind of hitting milestones and customer obsession, because people they want you to understand that you should be thinking for the next 3 to 5 years ahead, and not building a solution which is, you know, it's a quick fix for a problem or a feature that's going to be used in the next 3 months. Is it really just for the next 3 months, or is it going to be used by people beyond that? How are your systems going to scale in terms of performance and throughput? Are you building them at the beginning? Don't have to go back and have to re-engineer and redesign things because in a year's time you've gone from a 1 million TPS to a 10 million TPS system, and you know, it's kind of baked in right from the beginning. And then this is the frugality one is the one for me, which conflicts with a lot of things, because if you're planning for the future and you're building big systems, there's always the frugality. It's called out multiple times. You know, you're asking for 5,000 servers. Why are you asking for 5,000 servers? You should be really trying to run it on 1,000 servers, because 5,000 servers is very expensive. But 5,000 servers is going to give the customer the best experience possible. That trade-off and that conflict is always happening. So they'll be looking for to understand, you know, where you've had an experience of a design which could potentially build and be very performant and very interesting for the customer, but it consumes a huge amount of resources. Did you try and tune it? Did you try and reduce the operating throughput? Earn trust is how you kind of operate within teams, both in terms of, you know, how you get people to do things for you, how you get things done for you, and how you do things for other people. Do you build trust so that you become a person that people come to speak to and become an individual point of contact for various things? It's all about how you listen to people, how you talk to people, how your body language behaves, and you know, as I said, are you respectful to individuals? Because if you build trust, you can generally get quite a lot of things done. If you have, you know, if there's an animosity or a friction between people, less gets done. So you're always looking for those opportunities during the interview process to understand where you've had a conflict or where you've had a friction with either a process or a person or team. What have you done to fix that? Show me evidence where you've kind of really tried to break that down. Dive deep is one of those which is all about, have you really got to the bottom, the low level understanding of the problem that you're trying to fix? It's very easy to get a request for a new feature and go, yeah, we can build all that. But they'll be looking for you to understand, have you dug into the detail? Do you understand what's being asked? Is it viable? You know, is it going to break any other leadership principles? And the last few, you know, Amazon wants you to speak up. Amazon wants you to have an opinion. Amazon wants you to you know, to speak up your mind. They don't want people just to sit in the background and think they have a solution or have identified an issue that nobody else has. They want you to speak up about that. And sometimes you have to, you know, it goes with the be right and are right a lot. You've got to have the backbone to say, right, I believe this is the right way forward. I'll convince you with data and various other things, but I believe this is the way we should be going forward. But you have to do it within that, you know, that respectful, earn trust environment, and, you know, deliver results. If you can't provide evidence that you've actually delivered things, Amazon are gonna, you know, they're gonna question whether they want you on board. They're looking for people who've delivered things and gone all the way through the life cycle, whether it's a, you know, a university project, all the way through to a major 10 million TPS system. Depending on the level that you're going in, have you owned things? Have you delivered them? Have you got them in production and suffered all the problems that you typically go through with a system that's going through into production? And then the other two were introduced quite late. They came in just as I was exiting out, but they're reflecting the nature of where Amazon is within the universe, as it were. You know, they're a big company. They're heavily influential, and the be the best employer came out of some of the issues that were happening in the US, especially in the factories. And Amazon wanted to show that a lot of it was hearsay, a lot of it was misunderstanding of what was going on, and they baked this into, you know, strive to be the best employer, give people the best rights, give people the best conditions, and then they've certainly changed that in terms of the salary versus benefit. It's significantly different and designed to be more rewarding. And then just the last one just reflects on where that all is. You know, being one of the biggest organizations in the world, you have huge responsibility to make sure that organization is a good place to work, is a good impact on communities and people and countries. And, you know, when you're designing systems, you quite often have to take that into account now. Are you being the best you can be as an organization, as Amazon, for whichever kind of basis you're working in? I think one of the good examples is the AI system that they first built to do HRCV reviewing, and when the first version went out, it was quite biased on its selection, just through the machine learning model that they were using. And I think they responded quite quickly, and that pulled it, and were very apologetic for how that had worked. So, you know, but they're a big organization. They were trying to trim down their HR costs by simplifying the CV reviewing piece. So that's the leadership principles, as in you'll be told which ones are going to happen in each of the 1 hour segments. And it's really up for you to kind of go and research the leadership principles, and then just think about how you might be answering those questions. They're going to be based around, you know, you'll be told, you know, the first interview is going to be about deliver results. The second one's going to be about have backbone. Okay, so during deliver results, capture all of the information, write it down, get it noted of all the things that you've delivered, when you delivered them, how you delivered, but more importantly, what were the problems that you had, that you faced, that you overcome to deliver those things. And it's worth doing that for each of the leadership principles. There's lots of examples, again, on the internet that you can research very easily to understand how you'll never get asked a question about, have you done this, that you can answer yes or no. It'll be, tell me about a time when you've done this. So they'll want to know the situation that you're in, the actions that you did, and obviously the outcome. So the next part of the loop is what is about bar raising and bar raisers. So Amazon has a policy of what's called bar raising, and bar raising is the principle of always trying to ensure that the people that you're hiring improve or better than at least 50% of the team that's involved, and it leads to a continuous improvement. It's contentious because it's used at different times, and it's one of the things that the bar raiser who kind of runs the interview process will always ask: is this person a bar raiser? Do they move the team forward that we put them into? And it's up to the hiring managers kind of to responsibility to say yes or no, and it has a huge influence on whether someone gets a job. Now there's bar raisers, and there's lots of different bar raisers, but in terms of the interviewing, these are people who have been specifically trained to ensure that standards do not drop during hiring, and also to support hiring managers and make sure that the hiring manager always raising the bar. There'll always be a bar raiser on your interviewing process, and they will lead the decision process at the end when it all finishes. It's the bar raiser who guides everybody through and makes sure that that bar raising process takes place. It's useful because it ensures Amazon's always pushing the boundaries and making sure that when someone's coming in, they are going to add to the team, they are going to bring some benefit. So as well as the bar raisers, you typically have a hiring process which is made up of the hiring manager, somebody who is actively looking to fill a position. Sometimes if you've applied for just a generic role, you've submitted your CV, a hiring manager will be appointed to the process, and it's up to their decision with the bar raiser to make the final decision. There'll be other people, just people who've been trained in the interviewing process, because you can't interview at Amazon until you've actually been trained in and passed the interview process yourself. There'll be other people who are training, and they may ask questions, they may not, they may just sit in the background and watch what's going on. And some of those will be trained interviewers who are going through the bar raising training, and some of them will just be people who've decided they'd like to become an interviewer at Amazon. It's part of your hire and develop the best leadership principle that everybody's encouraged to become an interviewer while you're there. And that team will consist of generally 1 or 2 people per 1 hour slot. And then, so if you've got 4 slots, there's going to be about 8 people. Just to focus on the interview itself, it's all based on competency-based interviewing, and questions are always designed to explore your experience. They're never going to be an answer of, do you know this, have you done that, etc. So none of the questions will ever be able to be answered with a yes or a no. It'll always about, tell me about a time when you did this, describe a time when you did that. If you're in this environment, what did you do? And they're always wanting for you to provide situation that way. Also at this company, when I was a software engineer, or etc., I was responsible for this piece of work and I was given this opportunity. That's how you should start that off. They will then deep dive. One of the things you find during the interview process, people are just banging away at the keyboard constantly. There's a constant clatter as everybody who interviews to try and capture as much of the notes as they can, so they make an objective decision, not a subjective decision. So there's a huge amount of notes captured, and what they're listening for is areas to deep dive on. So you say, I was a software engineer at this company and I was asked to make a decision between using a linked list versus a binary tree. And they say, okay, so what were the criteria you selected? And then how did you go about, how did you realize you'd made the right decision? how did you ensure that it scaled? How did you ensure that it was not going to go and become an unperformant implementation? And you can see that there's a bit of a tree structure from the top question. There's multiple questions that go on and go on, diving deeper into that subject until they're comfortable that you've been seen as a bar raiser for that leadership principle, and then they'll back out and go on to the next question. Again, if you've got the evidence to fulfill the questions, it's an easy process. You just describe what you did, explain what you did, and explain the outcome. And the interviewers will always be comfortable with that. So on the day, relax. It is only Amazon. They're all very nice individuals. I've never met anybody who was ever unpleasant at an interview process, because of the way the training goes and the bar raising and the whole structure. It's quite a pleasing experience. I'd say the hiring team will already told you what's going to happen, so you know which areas of your career that will be delved into, and you'll know the types of questions that are going to be asked. You can go off and research them and dig through that. You'll also be told the order in the come, so you're not going into a meeting going, oh God, is this develop the best, or is this deep dive, etc. No, you'll be told when they're going through. Each of those interviews, they last about an hour. You get a quick introduction from the individual about who they are, what they do, etc. You'll then get about 45-50 minutes of questions, probably looking at 4 to 5 questions, and you'll be told, right, I'm going to focus on deep dive, but a couple of questions, right, finish that area. Now I'm going to look at hire the best. And then you already know that the questions aren't structured, so you try and guess what leadership principle. You'll be told specifically what leadership principle that's going to be. Don't worry if you lose your voice. I did. Right the way through. Because I was a senior manager, I had 9 interviews. I lost my voice at the 7th, and all they did was pump me with honey and sweet tea to try and get through it. So in the end, I eventually did. So. And then after the interview, you won't get the result at the end of the interview. You'll just get a thank you, and you'll get told that you'll get the result after 3 to 5 days. It's what happens, and it's part of the learning to be an interviewer. You're told to go in and think about it for 24 hours. You don't suddenly write up your decision, because quite often you go off and you reflect, so you're never going to get an answer almost straight away, unless there's been some horrendous decision on one side. But generally what happens is they go off, spend up 24 hours thinking about it. They'll collate all their information into a system, and then the team will gather and they'll go through, and everybody reads everybody else's feedback. Because sometimes you might have had a question that you just really didn't answer, and somebody answered a similar question, you got the evidence there, bang. You've got a much rounder picture. Then basically everybody votes, and it's called inclined, not inclined. And if everybody's inclined, you're going to get a job offer. If not everybody's inclined, that's when the bar raiser typically kicks in and kind of talks about why some people are inclined and not inclined. Ultimately, just guiding everybody to make sure that they come to a decision. And then eventually the majority rule happens there. That'll go back to hiring people, and they have a policy of making sure that you get a response back within 3 to 5 days. However, if you are unlucky, and it's about a 20 to 30% pass rate for the interview process. That's not the end of it. Your CV during the kind of the review process, if you were borderline or you just weren't right fit for a specific team or a specific role, you might get told to reapply in 6 or 12 months, and you'd be told why. Maybe it's your design patterns knowledge as a junior engineer wasn't strong enough, or maybe some of your leadership principles weren't strong enough to fit into a senior manager role. They will keep coming back at you, and quite often after 6 months you'll get a call out of the blue inviting you to reapply. Amazon doesn't like letting people go, so it's a useful process. And that's it. Right on 29 minutes. Any questions or comments or anything that people would like to ask?
Firstly, can I say a massive thank you, Keith? That was a really lovely level of detail and really good sort of drill into the competency-based interviews, which are used at with Amazon as well. You know, it's good advice, guys, with preparing for the tell me a time where you felt challenged, you enjoyed, you know, think of all the scenarios people can ask you, because it is a sort of well-established methodology for interviews. And, you know, have a couple of stories up your sleeve, and think of them as stories because, you know, people weren't where you were, they don't know the context, so you can really bring to life your experience with those. But yeah, it is interesting. Looking at the stretch targets was something I found out about recently, and you can see why it could be controversial, but also massively empowering in other ways. Guys, if anybody got any questions? I can't see everybody at the minute, so I'm going to apologize if there's hands up. If anybody has a question, do you want to stick your hand up, turn your camera on? Now's your moment. I guess in terms of readiness, Keith, do Amazon, do they tend to do cohorts of hiring, or is it sort of a constant stream?
It's constant stream, every level. I mean, just in terms of as an interviewer, once you're passed, you could be interviewing an internee one day, and then a principal engineer, a principal manager the next year. It's just the pipeline of job. If you're a hiring manager, you specifically focus on your areas that you're recruiting. If it's a general one, then you're very much just helping get through, because there's quite a volume and there's not enough interviewers available most of the time.
Brilliant. Doesn't look like we've got any questions from the crowd. I'm going to stop.
If anybody is thinking of applying or has applied and got an interview ahead of them, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I'll happily talk you through one-to-one what the process is like, or if you want me to even have a look at your CV, more than happy to kind of just have a quick scan and give you a pointers to make it more Amazon friendly.
I would encourage all of you to absolutely jump at the opportunity from anybody who hires to look at your CV. It's invaluable, basically. So, you know, it's exactly the same as designing and asking for client feedback. You know, so always useful to see what somebody looking at your CV thinks. I'm going to stop recording just in case there are